kind participation with Swadhyaya Sahachakra weekly forum dialogue. And it gives me a great sense of honor to welcome Professor Ajit Pandey ji. Today we are going to talk on the future of social theory. And let me give a kind of brief introduction to our Swadhyaya Sahachakra forum. And before that, I extend a very warm welcome to Professor Gyan Gloi from Italy, Alok Tandonji, Anantagiri, Meniti Pradhan, Professor Mohanty, Professor R.S. Dhawan, and all friends who are present here. Swadhyaya Sahachakra is a kind of circle of co-learning of self and mutual study. It is basically an initiative of studying and learning together self, culture, societies, and the world. Friends associated with this are eager to walk and mediate with new horizons of thinking and new movements of social cultural change at work in our contemporary world. We study seekers such as Maharishi Aurobindo, Mahatma Gandhi, Chittaranjan Das, a creative soul from Orissa, and many others from around the world. We also present our own writing and reflect upon our creativity together. We invite seekers from different fields of life to share their lives, vision, and sadhana for struggles for creating a world of beauty, dignity, and dialogue. Professor Ajit K. Pandey is well known for Vishwaneedam Circle and in particular and sociology in general. He has a deep engagement with research methodology, social theory, changes of sociological theory, Kinsey, travel polity, gender studies, subaltern studies, so on and so forth. His academic interest focuses on sociological theory and research methodology in social science, as well as subaltern studies, development studies. Throughout his career, he has critically and constructively engaged with the crisis of modernity and recently posing a new perspective on post-colonial theory and subaltern studies. We have received a lot of curiosity regarding this very conversation on the future of social theory. Social theory for all the students in social science in general and sociology in particular always gives a kind of analytical framework or paradigm used to examine social phenomena encompassing key concepts in our theory-making initiatives, such as societal change, power and control, social behavior. And these theories addresses crucial aspects like gender, ethnicity, capital, social class, justice, solidarity, so on and so forth. We have a living legacies of important sociological theorists who played a very significant role in shaping and nurturing better social life. So to initiate the session, I would like to invite Anantabhai to share some of his reflection as a...
Thank you, dear Randir, and thank you, friends co-present, Professor Ajit Pandey and friends. Thank you, Professor Pandey, for gifting us your thought this evening. The future of social theory is an open invitation, and we look forward to listening to Professor Pandey's journey with this. As a prelude, I want to invite us to my experience today. For example, I'm joining you from this beautiful open space in Madras Music University. And this morning I read from the press that there is a Korean film festival. So I just came rushing and I saw two films, in this Korean film. And I have been to Korea just to begin bringing that dimension. That I saw a film which depicts the collapse of a tunnel in Korea and how a person has survived. And now a great sociologist from Korea, Professor Sangjin Han, he applied Ulrich Beck's notion of risk society to understand Korean modernity. But my attraction to Korea also was initiated from a social theoretical perspective. When I was in Kentucky as a fellow, University of Kentucky in 2002, In the library, I just came across a book called Habermas and the Korean Debate. And a book like this suggests the kind of movement social theorizing has gone through, Habermas and the Korean Debate, and in which Professor Sangjin Han, who is the editor, he was bringing certain ways from Habermas to look at contemporary Korean society, the problem of democratization, including Confucianism. And he was arguing that Confucianism, though politically is presented as an authoritarian system, but it is possible to open Confucianism to the process of discursive argumentation that Habermas talks about. So, seeing this book, I wrote to Professor Sangjin Han, and then I was able to visit Korea. So, therefore, theorizing is a process of wandering, in the sense that one thing to read books of theory as system texts, systemic theory building. So, one fundamental challenge before theorizing is that theorizing began with a kind of system building where it is called unconditional, like a deductive system. It is not dependent on space and time like the scientific theories. But in the course, as Professor Delmeyer has challenged us to realize, to transform a kind of unconditional system building to different kind of conditioning. And that conditioning is a creative conditioning. In a way, subaltern studies also. How do we look at nationalism from the subaltern perspective? So therefore, how do we open theorizing to the movements of life? The second thing from Korea that Professor Sangjin has gifted is the notion of middling grassroots. He says that Korea has become a middle class society, but the dynamics of movement that is there, for example, for peace. In India, we are also talking about middle class. In fact, the class dimension of theorizing, but even if structurally some of us we can belong to middle class, but Han's perspective of middling grassroots suggests that a kind of a structural location also when it open to social mobilization, then it creates new kind of dynamics in society for peace, for harmony, for justice, which become the mothering spring of theorizing. So as Professor Pandey would give us his thought, I would quickly bring one or two other issues as a general perspective that today theorizing as it is happening in the context of different kind of social challenges like risk and climate change also, but the great challenge is also violence, because in a way what Anthony Giddens spoke about as nation state and violence. Now critical social theory, it also has to address the challenge of violence in a much more fundamental way. How do we grapple with the challenge of violence, nation state, personal, gender violence, caste violence, class violence, and move towards the kind of steps towards non-violence? This and that requires reconsideration of power, authority, democracy. The second thing is that social theorizing today, as it emerges from wherever we are, it is still confronted with the challenge of colonialism, Eurocentrism, and ethnocentrism. And then how do we theorize as part of planetary conversations? The third thing is, this is what Professor Fred Dallmayr, we pay our respect to his immortal soul, in a essay called The Future of Theory, which he presented at the decade decennial celebration of Center for Contemporary Theory in Baroda. He says that the theorist would leave spectatorial allure, and he would be a participant in the moving humanity. That means the challenge before theorizing is for us is to go beyond the kind of spectatorial grandeur, the kind of spectatorial arrogance that we have. And we would have to take part in the life worlds and life words of people through varieties of movements, including the whole question of humility, because theorizing has always been accompanied by a lot of theoretical arrogance. Therefore, how do we cultivate an art of humility? As another great contemporary philosopher, Michael Sandel from Harvard, in one of his recent book called The Tyranny of the Market, he brings the last topic is democracy and humility. So similarly, theorizing and humility. So, Professor Pandey, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Girisha. Thank you very much. And uh, I also thank uh, Dr. Ranveer Gautam Saab. Uh, Today's topic, actually, I'm working on this topic for last 2.5 years. The future of sociological theory or social theory. Am I audible to you? Am I?
Yes, 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 you are audible.
Actually, I'll try to present, first of all, the scenario that we have been confronting for a longer period of time in the modern world. The world that we survive in uh, is passing through a number of dramatic transformations. These transformations, most of the time, appear to arise from the increased technological mediation of uh, interpersonal relations, also from the blurring of boundaries between human subjects and impersonal objects. And the last is very important, that is proliferation of the new global social and cultural forms, varieties of forms we are talking about. So the dramatic transformations may be attributed to these three things that I have spoken to you at the moment. So these developments demand a new sociological imaginations. Not the imagination long back C. Wright Mills has conceived of. You must have gone through the book by him, Sociological Imagination, where he talks of a perspective, that is a sociological perspective that is constructed on the basis of the experiences of the individuals in a different kind of milieu that is surviving day in and day out. So these experiences are transformed into insight after a long experience in a different milieu. These experiences turn to be insights, and these insights take a shape of a perspective, which is so powerful for a man who has developed this. If we transport to the common masses, these common masses can fight out the mystification created by the bureaucrats in politics in the modern world. This is what C. Wright Mills has been talking about. But given the situation that I have talked about, these developments, as a matter of fact, need to have a new sociological imagination. And this, perhaps, to my understanding, in turn, a new concept that also requires a new conceptual vocabulary. That's very important. This vocabulary, as a matter of fact, should be better equipped to negotiate the daunting complexity of the contemporary world, the world that we live in day in and day out, than the classical one that we have already we are already familiar with, and that is still commonplace today. So now I'm of the opinion that why I'm talking about this, because for no longer is it possible to treat the terminology social relations as arising from the human relations. As did long back Karl Marx and Max Weber in their contributions to the growth of knowledge. Also, this concept of social is no longer appears to confine no longer in social interactions. These cannot be confined to social interactions, and these social interactions not to the face-to-face interactions of human agents. And also, this cannot be understood and conceived in terms of the talks of society in the same breath as the social, as was trend as early as 20th century for most of the majority of the scholars in the world. So objects and technologies, to my understanding, appear to exercise an increasing power, not the authority, over all our lives. And this power is to the extent that we can no longer place humans, if I may say so, as all-powerful agents at the center of all analysis, and even presuppose what it means to be human. So it is now easier to define the characteristics of an object. And this question of inhuman or human is more important than ever. If you talk of the concept of social, a changing form of the social, the content, I'm not talking the content, I'm talking about the, I'm not talking about the form, I'm talking about the content of the terminology social. And it appears, it started to turn to the heightened intervention of advanced media technologies, or we can speak of technological objects into the social world. So this is a development. It is a development which itself poses, particularly poses to sociology, not social sciences, but particularly to sociology, a whole new set of problems. For example, this I'm telling on the basis of my experience. An increasing number of working and personal relationships are now mediated by if you survive in day in and day out, day in, day out, if you recall your experiences in the modern world that you survive in, this is mediated by digital technologies that remove many of the physical barriers of time and space. But there are certain questions which also come to your mind. These questions are currently disturbing my minds. That I say, but are such daily relationships truly social relationships? And if so, what is to be meant now by the term social? Moreover, how might we begin to track these new accelerated relationships? And what methodologies might we use to do so? This is an especially difficult question, given that such relationships play out at an unprecedented speed across time and space and are conducted through networks and exchanges so fluid and complex that they are characterized more by a blizzard of connections than by fixed, clearly delineated social structures. So such questions raise important issues of speciality and scale, and in turn urge us to reconsider structural connections between the local, national, and global. So increasing numbers of social relationships, more than often mediated by new informations communications technologies, now cut across traditional nation-state boundaries. I don't know how much you agree with me, but once again, the question is, could it be that society, which tended to be theorized as being contained within the territorial limits of nation-state, is all but dead? Or is it possible that society, now the capitalistic society, is recasting itself in new global post-national directions? Another question that might it be that the social itself is no longer confined within the limits of society or the nation-state boundaries? It's what my understanding, and is increasingly fluid and diverse in form. So such questions that I have come out with are crucial to the immediate future of social theory. And my objective, my aim in this kind of deliberation is to push them a little further, not to provide any final answers. Answers maybe after the great deliberations. So while such issues that I have raised now and questions that I have come out with are more urgent than ever, they have yet to penetrate the core of mainstream sociology, or for that matter, in general, also sciences. In many respects, social theory or sociological theory, which is still built on foundations that date from the mid to late 19th century, in spite of the isolated attempts, individual attempts to or unthink the discipline from the within. And this is what I'm telling you. The Wallstein long back has talked about as far back as 1991. He has written beautiful. He has made a beautiful contribution in terms of unthinking social science. This was published in Cambridge University Press in 1991. So more often than not, it is still presumed without question that the humans exist at the center of universe. And these beings are discrete entities immune to technological intervention. And so, I know it appears to me endowed with the capacity to exercise agency. Agency means some kind of control over the world. Agency is over the world means control over the world. Beyond this, these agents, because of their nature as humans, regardless of what this nature might actually be, this maybe they are treated as intrinsically social beings. And here I like to place one of the famous formulations in this regard from Max Weber, 1978, in his book, famous book, Economy and Society, being that social relations are meaningful relations between humans. The basic connections between the human and the social remains relatively unexplored, at least from within the discipline of sociology, but is the bedrock upon which classical social theory is built, at least in the interpretative traditions. See, a prominent development of this attempted separation of the human and thus the social from objects or technologies, and with this, the defense of the human subject, is the work of Manuel Castells, you must be familiar with, which treats new media technologies as the expression of ourselves. And this he has explicated beautifully in his book, The Internet Galaxy, that is published in 2000 by Oxford University Press. And he looks not at the transformative powers of these technologies, but at the ways in which they extend existing forms of human action. So this position, in fact, replicates an argument made by Max Weber almost over more than 90 years ago, and that one that reduces all interest in technologies, objects or machines to the purposes or meanings bestowed on them by human action. I have with me the book by Max Weber, Economy and Society. I love to read the paragraph from his book. That is a new edition published in 1978, page number 7. He writes, let me read out. To be devoid of meaning is not identical with being lifeless or non-human. Every artifact, such as, for example, a machine, can be understood only in terms of the meaning which its production and use have had or were intended to have, a meaning which may derive from a relation to exceedingly various purposes. So without reference to this meaning, such an object remains wholly unintelligible. That which is intelligible or understandable about it is thus its relation to the human action in the role either of means or of end, a relation of which the actor or actors can be said to have been aware and to which their action has been oriented. This is the paragraph by Max Weber on page number 7. If you look into his book, Economy and Society. So in this perspective, as a matter of fact, which runs from the 19th century through to this day that I'm talking about, sociology is only to be concerned with objects and technologies in relation to their intended uses or meanings, so that in the last, ultimately, they are to be understood in terms of the known intentions of human activity. But such a positions, to my understanding, increasingly difficult to maintain. Once again, I have some questions, and that is, what if objects and technologies today exceed their intended capacities and meanings? It's one question. Second is, what if these technologies now exercise power over our lives rather than vice versa? Is what long back Marshall McLuhan has spoken as far back as 1964. And one of the recent statements, this is by Botilat, this is as far back as 1993, these people have suggested. So another question, what if we are no longer aware of the ways or the directions in which technologies mediate our actions? And so to that extent, can relations between humans that are mediated through new communications technologies and virtual environments be designated social, quote and unquote, in the traditional sense? And if we can no longer presuppose or agree on what it means to be human, my question is, what might this mean for social theory built on understanding and interpreting human relations? So the last question is, does the loss of a discrete and clearly definable human subject spell the end for the discipline of sociology, or in alternative fashion, or alternatively mark an exciting new beginnings? So these types of questions, these new types of questions that I have come out with have been asked, as a matter of fact, most of the time outside of the discipline, not by sociologists, but by many thinkers as diverse as Lyotard, who in his famous contributions, title is The Inhuman, published in 1991, addressed the impact of technology, addressed the great the impressions of accelerated time on the so-called human condition. Another scholar, Donna Haraway, also in 1991, who questions the boundaries between humans and machines in a analysis of cyborg. And once again, another Catherine Hillis, this as far back as 1999, and who has examined the emergence of post-human in cybernetic theory, cybernetic theory. And more recently, important debates have taken place over the bearing of genetic engineering of the human, fired in particular by Fukuyama's great contribution, The Great Disruption, published in 2000, and our Post-Human Future, published once again in 2003. So the impact of these broadly philosophical writings by these scholars that I have referred to are starting to be felt within the field of sociology. For example, in some of the in the growing sociological literature on genetics, and new attempts at rethinking the social are emerging as a consequence. So meanwhile, elsewhere in the discipline, similar things are happening. For instance, the basic categories of sociology are being called into question. And with this new social theories being forced, debates which have raised over the changing status of human identity, the emergence of the new hybridized cultural forms, or even the transfiguration of the nation state are today feeding into analysis of the social and new theories, and the methods are emerging in turn. So these are exciting times for social theory. and for the social sciences, more generally, and sociology more particular. So this situation is a cry, not of today, but cry from the late 1980s, when with the demise of Marxist thought, orthodox Marxist thought, social theory looked to be in decline. For a while, the collapse of the Marxist orthodoxy, from I may say so, loosened the traditional binding of the social with a theory of production or class. Few alternatives, conceptions of the social, either in terms of either new or reinvented from the writings of sociologists Durkheim, Max Weber, and Simmel, immediately came to the fore. So this in part was due to the emergence of new postmodern approaches that privileged aesthetics, language, and singularity over the analysis of social institutions and social structures. And in their most extreme and polemical form, declared the social to be dead. This is what I'm referring to Baudrillard as far back as 1983. So at this point, social theory appeared to have little future, but new prospects opened in turn with the construction of postmodern theories of sociality. And this is by Meffer-Solé as far back as 1995. New approaches to reflexive modernizations, the risk society. This is by Beck, Giddens, and Lass, and they jointly contributed as far back as 1994. And globalization, for example, Ronald Robertson, 1992, Malcolm Waters, 2000, and exciting developments in political, cultural, media, feminist, and literary theory, as well as in the discipline of history, that is Joyce, 2002. So today, these approaches and theories are beginning to have influence, to impact upon the form and content of mainstream sociology, which until now has tended to confront itself with a rather traditional theoretical and conceptual vocabulary. So there is still much work to be done, but nevertheless, things are changing. Sociology is once again broadening its imagination. New spaces are opening up for dynamic thinking, reasonable thinking, and for theoretical and conceptual invention. So now I like to dwell upon, I don't know if you have time, Baudrillard, slightly for 5 to 10 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes. As a matter of fact, the primary rationale of my communication, my idea, my thought, is to explore some of the directions that new theory might take. And with this, to call into question the changing basis of social today. Social, I'm talking quote and unquote. A key proposition of my understanding of my lecture, whatever you call it, is that the socially changing in form rather than disappearing. This position goes firmly against the grain of more extreme visions of 1980s that pronounced the social along with the modern ideas of history and class that I have already brought back in previous communications of mine, earlier communication, to be dead. The most most famous and most important declarations on this declaration, as a matter of fact, came out from Jean Baudrillard, who in his work, you must be familiar with his famous work, In the Shadow of the Silent Majority. This became published as far back as 1983. He presented three alternative scenarios. That social, the term social never existed in reality. There has never been anything but simulation. He says the simulation of the social and social relations. Now the next is that social now exists everywhere and invests everything, with the implication that it exists everywhere and nowhere, or that the social reality did exist, but that's so no longer. So for the most part, Baudrillard pushes the logic of the last one that I have talked about, last position, and treats the social as an object, as an effect of second order, that is simulacra, the order of mass production and the class relations. That disappears with the emergence of digitalized forms of simulation and the mass circulation of science or quotes. And he declared, let me brought back his own statement, present his own statement, one paragraph. He declares, social only exists in a perspective space. It dies in the space of simulation. So we can put it very in simple fashion. Baudrillard treats the social as an effect of reality, which is not understood as a universal truth, but rather as a temporary outcome of mass commodity productions. So with digitalization of the mechanical forces of productions, and therefore the advent of new virtual and hyper-real forms, the reality is seen to disappear along with traditional class opposition based upon the private ownership of physical property or the means of production. And with the disappearance of reality, class is said to go to, it also vanishes. And with it, the whole sphere of social relations. For with the advent of new forms of simulation and simulacra, the social, for instance, a people, a class, a proletariat, a rich man, whatever you call it, along with related opposition, in particular, the class struggle is neutralized and effectively vanishes. So it implodes on itself and is absorbed into masses, which, unlike classes, are undifferentiated and non-stratified, which finally, in turn, become increasingly silent and apolitical. Therefore, hence, with the transition from class-based to mass consumer society, politics and the social are seen to be all but finally dead. So I don't know how much time, Randhir ji, can I for 5 minutes more, 5 to 10 minutes?
Sure.
This I actually like to speak on certain limitations of Baudrillard's formulations, and prior to that, I like to speak on Marx and beyond. Marx, let me have prasad. My son has brought the prasad. I'm eating it. One few seconds, please. It is important, as a matter of fact, it's worth pausing at this juncture for a moment to consider the logic of Baudrillard's argument. Not because it is one of the most striking positions on the social and its apparent demise, that is, since the early 1980s. As a matter of fact, what is interesting about Baudrillard's position is that, like so many theories of the social, it is connected, it is tied to a one-dimensional reading of Marx, and in no way considers alternatives, that is non-Marxist theoretical paradigms, non-Marxist lines, along which a theory of the social might be developed. This was my understanding. So Marx's own use of the term social is, as a matter of fact, is complex and it shifts from text to text. One reading of the term social that Baudrillard in no way adopts in his entire formulations, if you read all his contributions, comes at the conclusion too, is what on the Jewish questions, Marxist, where Marx talks not of political emancipations, like Bruno Bauer has been talking about, but of social emancipations. He's talking of social emancipation. The difference, the matter of fact, is that difference is in very fine, very short. Whereas political emancipation involves the granting of political rights to individuals, which is a process which reduces man on the one hand to the member of civil society. The egoistic, the independent individual, and on the other to the citizen, the moral person. This is what Marx is speaking about. And this from his Marxist contributions. The social emancipation is just opposite to that, not opposite to that, slightly different, attacks the very ideology of rights and citizenship, which festicized individuals and demands that we restore ourselves to communal species beings. So Marx's emphasis then appears to be placed not on the political right to be Jewish, to be Jewish, but on the passage beyond both religion and rights, which are at the same time a source of freedom and subjection. To a society, emphasis is, this emancipation, the rights to a society that is emancipated from the privileged class, from the bourgeoisie and self-interested politics of capitalist society. In other words, you can speak of the social emancipation is basically or essentially the same thing as human emancipation. And this lies, here lies a step beyond politics, and the social is the utopian form of the post-political situations. So in these terms, it would be very easy to take a post-social position. For the decline of revolutionary politics would seem to spell the end of the social, as Marx defines it in the book that I've referred to here. That means that there is no such thing as post-political situations. So, but Baudrillard does not formulate his argument in quite this way. He simply ignores it. Instead, his emphasis is placed firmly on production and class. This argument draws its understanding of the social from the pages of a quite different text. And that is, if you read his Marxist book, German Ideology, will be very clear to you, in which, particularly in the section premises on the materialistic method, if you read it, this is more methodological. Here, he argues that the social is less tied to the emancipation than to productions. So in this work, Marx stresses the history of productions through different historical configurations before trying to formally emancipate, trying it firmly to a conception of social. So I don't like to dwell upon that because that will take a lot of period of time. Finally, I like to focus more on hyper-social. Unwittingly, however, Baudrillard reveals the weaknesses of his early positions. After reading Karl Marx thoroughly, he finds certain limitations in his earlier formulations. So he reveals the weaknesses of his positions and of his theories that conflate class and the social in his later book, that is Seductions, that became published in 1990. In this work, Baudrillard attacks the concept of the social from a different angle, saying that the age of the law has passed, and with it, that of the sources and the social contract. So this statement is intended to draw attention to the precariousness of law and the concept of value, as Western culture passes through second order of simulacra, the era of mass production. to a third order, which is characterized by the mass circulation of science and new forms of digital modeling and simulation. So this instability becomes increasingly evident in the transparency of Abel. This is by Baudrillard, where he talks of a fourth stage of chaos and certainty, where properly speaking, there is no law of value, merely a sort of epidemic value, a sort of metathesis of value, and this is a haphazard proliferation and dispersion of value. This is what Professor Giri was talking about in his introductions. So the important point here is the underlying connection between modern contractual law, or more specifically the rights of man and the birth of the social. So what Baudrillard finally suggests that here, that social is not simply the effect of mass production and class relations, but is connected more fundamentally with the historical pursuit of political rights based on or a claim to universality. So to my understanding, what is wrong in Baudrillard's account is the attempt to show that the claim for universality, especially the universality of the social, is in fact highly particular and tied to a specific phase of Western industrial development. So what is weaker in his explanation of the ways in which institutional and ideological systems of contractual law and positive right, particularly those that developed out of French Revolution, were ultimately connected to the social from its outset. And such a connection, in fact, crucial to the understanding of the social in the classical form. So therefore, as a matter of fact, changes in the legal structures of modern societies provide a backdrop to what we know as classical social theory. And rightly, Rousseau spoke. I like to position here Rousseau, that he is famous for his emergence of the social contract. Comte formulated the law of the three stages: theological, metaphysical, and positive, etc. Durkheim analyzed the rise of the forms of sanction and the shifts from repressive to restitutive law. And Weber opposed legal rational domination to earlier traditional and charismatic forms. Hegel spoke of the birth of subjectivity, accompanying the emergence of positive rights, and Marx, at least in his early work, exposed the difference between the political emancipation and the human emancipations. In view of this, Baudrillard's earlier declaration of death of the social, based on the disappearance of class, is clearly one-sided, because if anything, the social emerged in the attempt to understand changes in the structural basis of law that occurs. So this connection requires detailed analysis. But because of the paucity of time, I don't dwell on that. I cannot do this. Anyway, my suggestion is that there are many more contributors in this regard. And before we conclude, we must, there are certain scholars that also deserve a special mention. One is Bauman, Liquid Sociality. Butler, Judith Butler, that is reanimating the social. Bruno Latour, the social ad associations. Scott Lass, the information is alive. John Uri, complex mobilities. Saskia Sassen, space and power. Ulrich Beck, that is the cosmopolitan turn. And Nicholas Rose, governing the social. And last is the Verghese, Francois-Verghese, post-colonial challenges. So these are certain ingredients which may reflect on the future of social theory agenda. Thank you very much to all of you for your patient listening, and particularly to Professor Giri and Professor Randhir Gautam Saab. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my ITRs.
Thank you so much. It is really very enriching and inviting and insightful presentation, and all these recent and contemporary sociologists, and along with the classical sociologists, social scientists, they basically understand that the task of or the achievement of social theory lies not in the abstract theory and geometric proof, but in finding ways by which to light our ways to live well-lived life. And your presentation is a kind of invitation for all of us to engage primarily with the question of what is social and the kind of changing dynamics of society, the kind of changing dynamics of power, where we locate a kind of social order in that sense, which is a kind of basic orientation of theory building. So now I request respected participant to share their reflections. So we can invite Professor Gyan Luigi to share some of his reflection.
Well, thank you very much. It was very interesting. I have no particular question to pose. I am reflecting on the different points because there were very many, and especially I would be interested in some further explanations and position on Max Weber, since have been studied it, but not so much the work on economy and societies, but rather that on the Protestant ethics and the spirit of capitalism. And but anyway, everything was very interesting, and all the authors who were quoted would deserve, of course, particular questions, notations, observations, and I'm reflecting on the different points, and I could take very many notices during the exposition. I thank you very much. It was really very interesting. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now may I invite Rohan Phantom to share some of his reflection.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your presentation. I don't know if I have any questions, but I've been thinking about what you said about how we can't place humans as all-powerful agents, and which made me think about another theory called object-oriented ontology, where it talks about how objects escape the subject. Like, we can no longer talk about human subjects or agents completely in control of our environment, like how Enlightenment rationality spoke about it. But then it's like the agency is not an agency of the human anymore, but it's decentered. It's an agency that emerges within an embedded system, where human and non-human agents, like objects and technologies and even the ecosystem as an agent, they have an influence on our social identity. And I think that our social theory should pay attention to all forms of agencies that escape our human control and re-envision the social. That's just my humble comment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other participant? Miniti Pradhanji, I would request to share some of your question or comment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Ajit Pandey ji. It was really very insightful presentation. I mean, as I'm reflecting upon all these things, I'm just curious to know about another aspect, like what is the role of social criticism in the future of social theory? I mean, probably I would like to know about that a little bit. Thank you.
Okay. So, Ananta bhai? It's taking some time. So, yes, Professor Pandey, please reflect on this.
I'm very grateful to the comments that have come up at the moment by the great scholars. Let me clarify. I agree with all of the points that you have come out with as not criticism. This is reflections on my communications. As a matter of fact, this is the addition to the points that I have started with. Some of the points, because of certain positive time, I could manage to miss because I have to be within the time period. But let me speak out. How do you formulate theory? Why do you formulate a theoretical construct? I mean, theoretical structures. The theory is formulated, as a matter of fact, in order to look into the crisis, to respond to the crisis in the modern world, or we people in the modern world have been confronting or confront day in and day out in our everyday life. So, but we must know about that. What should be the nature of the formulation of theoretical structures of this kind, which are these structures which have the capacity of doing away with the crisis or minimizing the crisis that we confront. To my understanding, a theory cannot be relevant to any kind of crisis if it is formulated in terms of individual institutional factors or ingredients, or in terms of historiographic monographic factors. What is required this moment of time, the modern period of time that I have portrayed the situation entirely. What kind of situations that we do have this moment of time? What kind of situations have been emerging, particularly after 1990s? In this period, that we as a sociologist, we as a social scientist, a student of sociology, we must create situations in which these two diametrically opposite factors, number one, individual institutional factors. Number two, historiographic monographic factors must marry with each other. If they marry with each other, I'm sure of the theory will be in a competent position to deal with any kind of crisis that we confront today in the modern world. Then the problem of social, the meaning of social is automatically, perhaps appears to be automatically resolved. This is what my understanding. So the crisis situations that we do have, and we as a student of sociology, our objective is to look into either to minimize the crisis or to contain the crisis, 100% contain the crisis. And the history of sociology is replete with this kind of process. Look at Comte's positivism. He was a man of physics, and then his constructions in terms of theory, that is positivism, as a matter of fact, is a function of social reality, the then period of time. And social reality, to his understanding, partly because of the fact that he was from physics background, is empirically grounded. Empirically grounded meaning thereby, which is the reality which is confined to your sense organs. That is the social, according to Comte. And that was vehemently reacted by, perhaps opposed by Max Weber in his understanding of reality in terms of meaningful categories of human experiences. And that's why you see positivism cannot be a competent method to deal with or to understand the reality. So for that, you need to have a different kind of perspective, different kind of method that he comes out with ideal types, because he knows that common sense understanding of human experiences, your common sense understanding of your everyday life experiences, this is what he defines as versatile and the knowledge, or maybe the experiences, whatever you speak of. So I don't like to dwell upon, but that also became contradicted by Karl Marx and neo-Marxist theoretical structures. And then you were rightly speaking of the Frankfurt School, critical school, Habermas and all, where they conceive the reality in different framework. And then finally, in 1990s, early, I believe late 1990s, new school of thought, you see the center of debate has changed. That postmodernism, after the advent of postmodernism and post-structuralism, postmodernism was not the critique of positivism only, but postmodernism was the critique of the critiques of positivism. It stood against Max Weberian school of thought. It stood against ethnomethodology, phenomenology. It stood against the Frankfurt School. And finally, see the debate center has changed. So I don't like to go into the details. I'm sure of all London people are familiar with. So you rightly commented, the requirement is needed to the extent we sociologists are ignoring or not taking cognizance of certain kinds of issues that I have spoken into my communication today. But requirement is not needed for any kind of understanding of the social or the change of the form and the content of the social. If you become ingrained into the terminology social, we become, you see, we do not confine ourselves only to the temporal structures of reality. We also at times go to the atemporal. You rightly speak of ontology. Ontology means what? There are certain kinds of structures which are beyond our sense organs understanding. They have their own independent existence, given the fact that our sense organs are not in the position to comprehend them. So we talk of the social to the extent this is also included. The temporal structures should have also space in this form of the understanding that is the social. Anyway, this is what I wanted to communicate. Thank you very much for your comments, and that is a beautiful comments, reasonable comments. This has, as a matter of fact, provided me a lot of conceptual materials for my writing. I'm in the midst of my writing.
Hello.
Thank you, Professor Giri Saab. Now I'm ready to. I'm actually preparing myself to hear the comment from you again. Please comment on the communications of mind. I know that it's sort of certain kinds of materials that I should have come out with, but this is left for you. Please do comment on my communications.
So thank you so much, Professor Pandey. And I have joined this dialogue as a kind of a wayfarer. So I joined it from a very beautiful location, and I have 2 more online dialogues to take part. So thank you. So my submission is that all your reference points, we are mainly from the Euro-American world.
American, that's
But
correct.
when we are
87, I forgot to refer to
Yeah.
it. I'm working on that.
So, but it is just a submission that the challenge for theorizing today is precisely emerging from that. For example, let us look at the question of technology.
Right.
Technology and society. Now, to this, scholars from India also have engaged. For example, Professor Uberoy's work on sociology of science and technology.
Right.
And he wrote a very important essay called Technology of Obsolescence.
Yes, I read.
That was, for example, so the point is that the invitation for us that all these critical themes, that how do we really cultivate theorizing in a process of mutual learning. And the other thing, for example, about class, and class also, understanding class, Indian sociologists, Pete and others, So what invites us to think about, why is that there is no engagement with contemporary thinkers from India as part of world social theorizing? It is an invitation for us to reflect upon. The second question is that even when we talk about Max Weber, now there are very deep engagement with Weber from India. For example, T.N. Madan has written a profound essay on Weber and Gandhi. This is my second query. The third thing is that what you presented during discussion about postmodernism and positivism, and you seem to suggest that postmodernism does not have a profound critique of positivism. If I read you this way, if I hear you this way, then my submission is not necessarily so, because there are varieties of postmodern. Lyotard reflects one side, but talking about crisis of positivism also, that how Indian thinkers have dealt with it. I would just refer to again Uberoy's work on positivism and semiology almost 40 years ago, and the work of Sundararajan, R. Sundararajan, who talks about crisis of positivism in his Beyond the Crisis of European Sciences. So therefore, your work really invites us as future of social theory. How do we engage with some of the thinkers from India, not as a mark of nativism, but as a mark of world theorizing today?
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm really that provides me a lot of conceptual ideas, a lot of materials, Professor Giri. Certainly, I'll take into cognizance the suggestions that you have. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I request Miniti Pradhanji to offer kind vote
No,
of
just
thanks.
1 minute. Hello, Randir.
Yes.
Please share some of your thoughts, 1 or 2 points from you.
Yeah, I was about to tell that.
I am very much, worrying about the fact that where what will be the reference point of human nature? Because generally, social theory comes from understanding human nature. And what we look into human nature, that actually a kind of condition of our theory building. So now whether in which direction human nature is going, right, moving. right? There is we have a kind of Darwinian notion, whether that is moving towards ahinsatmak way, whether our human nature is moving towards non-violence or violence. The kind of violence is emerging, and we have a very much conceptualization on that. So usually I find like the way political scientists theorize human nature, generally we sociologists do not theorize human nature. So the future of sociological theory building, whether we can invite such theorists in the very process of theory building, or we are just following a kind of pattern which is very much Eurocentric and very much problematic also. We just come with three framework: Weber, Durkheim, Marx, and we are not moving ahead from the very initiative of our theory building. So like we can see the way sociology emerged. People are coming from literature, people coming from other discipline, and they have gave a kind of pathway of enriching sociological theory building. So my quest is where to, again, that is very a contested question, whether sociology consider human nature as a ultimate thing of theory building or not, or because we have a kind of psychological, biological, political, sociological, this compartmentalization, I think whether we can move away from this compartmentalization. Because recently I am trying to understand some kind of work with Professor Nandkishore Acharji, and he is trying to make me understand that where to understand theory, like how we can understand human nature, and through human nature to society nature. What we have in sociological theory building is from society nature to social nature. So again, I'm just problematizing the thing, but Professor.
I'd like to speak something. If you give me 1 minute time, please.
Please.
Can I speak out? Can
Sure.
I speak?
Sure.
Actually, in my entire presentation, I don't know how come I missed some of the Indian thinkers' contributions. For instance, it's what I've been working on for Shakespeare for a longer period of time. I'm also familiar with the all contributions by Professor J.P. Sobroi. And if at all, I have the great respect for Delhi School of Economics, this is only Professor J.P. Sobroi. Partly, mainly because of the fact that he has a strong philosophical background, at the same time, the philosophy of science background. My understanding is that sociologists cannot be sociologists if his understanding is burst off philosophy and philosophy of science and philosophy as such. These two things. So that's why I have two respects for three individuals from Indian background. They are the social scientists. One is Professor A.K. Sharan, another from Lucknow School of Sociology. He taught for some time in Lucknow School. Second is Professor J.P. Sobroi. His contributions are really mountainous, marvelous. And the third, I don't know this, I should not speak in front of his Professor Anand Giri. Anand Giri, I'm really a fan of Anand Giri's contributions because right from very beginning, ever since I've come to Lucknow, as far back as 1990, I've been reading his contributions. I've been reading all his analytical frameworks and all theoretical formulations that he's talking about. The beauty in his entire formulation is that his understanding of reality is not at the temporal level only. He always talks about our temporality, our temporal elements in his entire formulations of theoretical structures. And that's why I do have a lot of respect and love for him. I'm really a fan, if I may say, I'm a fan of Professor Anand because of his deep understanding of Indian traditions, Indian values, and so it will not be exaggeration. Thank you very much. And I do have also respect for you because your commitment to the academics, I'm sure of will take you to the DC height one day. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.